huge issue, and what you began with is what we call the normative effects of the law. Whenever a government passes law, it sends a message. It tells you something. It says, we think these are good things. These are values we endorse, we promote. So whenever something may have been illegal in the past and it becomes legalized, that sends, as you say, a strong social, psychological message. Well, look, the state thinks it's cool now, so I guess it's cool. I mean, if the government okays it, why not? So that is always a danger in, laws by the state, basically overriding either long-term historical laws going back millennia, or, individual conscience and so on. You don't even have to bring in the religious discussion here. The Hippocratic Oath, right? Go back about, 2,500 years. The first principle there, which was taught in all medical schools for ages, do no harm, right? So both abortion and euthanasia 2,500 years ago by secular Greeks were seen to be morally wrong, and medicine should not be involved in that kind of activity. So obviously when the state does get involved in that activity, it sends a strong message. It's telling people, well, yeah, maybe in the past they thought it was wrong, but we enlightened moderns, we know better, and it's fine. Go for it, no issue. So here we can talk about three functions of the law. A law always tends to do one of three things. It can prohibit something, which abortion, things like homosexuality, so many other issues for so long were prohibited, or it can go the next step, permit something, right? Well, okay, we're going to decriminalize it. We won't throw you in jail, but we're not going to actively push it. But usually what happens when you start permitting what was once prohibited is soon enough, right? It becomes promoted. Then the government gets into the game of, hey, this is now law. This is not just something that's legal. You have a right to do it. And when you have a right to do something, that means others have a responsibility to make sure that right goes through. So let's say you have a Christian or even a conscientious chemist who doesn't want to sell morning after pills in his pharmacy, right? Again, you can be a secular guy who's got issues with it. When you have a law like this go through, then there's a follow-through effect. All the other things have to get into place. If you are a pharmacist, you have to sell this. Somebody comes in, says, can I have the morning after pill, or contraceptives of various kinds, some of which are abortifacients. Well, then the pharmacist or the nurse or whoever has to do it. Otherwise, you're found to be working against this newly declared right. 2008, we said you have a right to do this. So who are you as a pharmacist or whatever to not allow others to exercise their rights? So it's all about rights talk. Almost nothing about responsibility. In the past, good government always balanced rights and responsibilities. You couldn't just push the one, you'd have to have both. But today it's all about rights, individual autonomy, my choice. Well, of course, in here, to make it clear to what's happening, you have two people who walk into an abortion mill. If it's successful, one person walks out alive. The other one is back in there dead. So where's the choice of that second human being? And again, any embryology textbook tells you, from the moment of conception, this is a genetically unique, one-off, distinct human being. It's not part of the mother. It's a completely separate entity having a short-term housing and feeding in mom, but otherwise a complete distinct individual. So what about their right to life? What about their choices? So again, we focus on adult whims and rights. Same with things like the homosexual marriage debate. We lose A, responsibility, but B, the rights of others their rights are being infringed when we give special rights to other groups. Yeah, well, that's it. In a democracy, you're always juggling rights with different groups of people. You have, at the very least, majority rights, minority rights. How do you juggle those two? So again, whenever you give special rights, and this especially comes into the play with the homosexual debate, when you grant special rights to a small group of people, that will impact on everybody else, for good or ill. Some may think they're going to benefit or gain by it, but others will certainly lose. Some of their rights will be taken away. I mean, everything we've seen, not just here, but in the US and elsewhere, as soon as homosexual marriage goes through, for example, right? Bake my damn cake. This whole idea. I'm going to go into a Christian, I know he's a Christian. I'm going to go into his bakery, his cake shop, and demand that you bake me a lesbian wedding cake, knowing full well, A, there's 10 other bakeries in the same area who'd be happy to do it for you. But B, because it's going to conflict with his conscience, he probably will say no, and then these guys will go after him, and they'll have the full weight of the law on their side, right? It's now not just, oh, we've got our right to marry, but now we're taking away your right as a conscientious cake maker or a florist or a photographer or a wedding caterer, whatever the case may be. Their rights are now under restriction or being jeopardized. In fact, we've had people jailed, thrown in prison for times, fined, losing their jobs, you name it, all these implications for wanting to be true to your conscience or your faith or your convictions. So you grant these rights here. Others are going to either lose them or be under, as you say, persecution. The state will side with one group over against other groups. So my second book, I actually did 2.5 books on homosexuality. In my second, I simply document about 200 cases of people fined, thrown in jail, losing their job, kicked out of Facebook. Now, who could that be? Who gets kicked out of Facebook?